The comment had thousands of likes. He just wanted to hurt someone. For most people, that conclusion only appeared afterward. But there were clear signs from the beginning. Signs that go unnoticed when we are too busy trying to interact, please, or keep things light. It is not about being lonely. It is about creating enough space to observe people without rushing. There is a particular kind of understanding that develops when someone spends regular time alone, even if they also enjoy being around others. Not isolation, not avoidance. Just enough distance to see patterns rather than reacting to moments. And what emerges from that space is not cold detachment or cynical superiority. It is clarity. Psychologists study frameworks. People who observe from a distance recognize systems in real time. The difference matters more than most realize. When you are constantly surrounded by interaction, your brain prioritizes adaptation over analysis. Social engagement activates survival mechanisms designed to help you fit in, respond appropriately, maintain harmony. These are useful skills, but they are not designed for accuracy. They are designed for acceptance. Every conversation becomes a performance, even a subtle one. You monitor tone, you adjust language, you manage the emotional temperature of the room. And while all of this is happening, your perception narrows. You see what is necessary to navigate the moment, not what is actually there. Spending time alone changes the equation. When no one is watching, when there is no need to respond or impress or belong, observation becomes possible in a way it simply cannot be during constant engagement. The pressure to interpret everything through social filters lifts. Behaviors stop being things you must react to and become things you can simply notice. This is not a skill reserved for introverts or people who dislike socializing. It is available to anyone who creates enough internal space to watch without investment. Consider what happens in a group setting. Someone dominates the conversation, another person withdraws, a third makes a joke that lands awkwardly, then overcompensates. Most participants are too busy managing their own presence to track these dynamics clearly, but someone who has practiced stillness, who knows what it feels like to exist without performing, sees the entire structure. They notice the person who controls the room is not confident but anxious. They see the quiet one is not shy but calculating. They catch the joke that failed because it revealed something the speaker did not intend to show. None of this requires judgment. It just requires attention, sustained long enough to let patterns surface. The mistake people make is assuming social experience automatically translates into social understanding. It does not. More interactions do not guarantee deeper perception. They often guarantee the opposite. When you are always engaged, you learn to navigate, not to see. You become fluent in responding, not in recognizing. Solitude functions as a training ground for perception because it removes the urgency to react. You watch a conversation unfold and notice the micro-expressions, the shifts in energy, the moments when someone says one thing, but their body communicates another. You are not trying to keep up. You are not trying to contribute. You are simply present without the weight of participation. Over time, this builds something psychologists call pattern recognition, but it is more intuitive than that phrase suggests. It becomes instinct. You meet someone new, and within minutes, you sense whether they are reliable, whether they are performing, whether something beneath the surface contradicts what they are projecting. This is not magic. It is repetition without distraction. Here is what happens when someone becomes comfortable being alone. They stop needing constant validation. And when you stop needing validation, you stop projecting expectations onto others. You see them as they are, not as you need them to be. That shift is profound. Most misunderstandings in relationships, professional or personal, come from projection. We interpret behavior through the lens of what we want, what we fear, what we have experienced before. We explain away inconsistencies to maintain comfort. We rationalize red flags because we are invested in a particular outcome. When you spend enough time alone to know yourself clearly, your rhythms, your limits, your emotional patterns, you become less likely to confuse someone else's behavior with your own narrative. You notice when something does not fit. You trust that discomfort instead of dismissing it. This is why people who are comfortable with solitude often have an easier time making decisions about who to trust, who to avoid, who to keep at a distance. Not because they are suspicious, but because they are calibrated. They have spent enough time with themselves to know what calm feels like, what tension feels like, what manipulation feels like. So when those sensations arise in the presence of someone else, they recognize them immediately. There is a specific moment in every developing relationship, whether romantic, professional, or platonic, when someone reveals who they are beneath the initial presentation. It might be a comment made in passing, a reaction to mild frustration, the way they speak about someone who is not in the room. People who are always socially engaged often miss this moment because they are too busy maintaining the interaction. But people who have learned to observe without attachment catch it. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The comment about someone just wanting to hurt people, that recognition came late for most. But the signs were there early. The inconsistencies, the small cruelties framed as jokes, the way boundaries were tested incrementally. Someone watching without the need to smooth things over, without the impulse to give endless benefit of the doubt, would have seen it sooner. This does not mean solitude makes you cynical, it makes you discerning. There is a difference between assuming the worst and simply noticing what is actually happening. One is fear-based, the other is clarity-based. People who understand this balance, who can move between engagement and observation, between connection and space, develop a kind of perceptual fluidity that serves them across every area of life. They are not cold, they are not disconnected. They are simply awake in a way that constant stimulation prevents. Psychologists rely on theories, diagnostic criteria, frameworks built from aggregated data. These tools are valuable, but they are also removed from the immediacy of lived experience. A psychologist can tell you what narcissistic behavior looks like in clinical terms. Someone who has observed it unfold in real time, without the pressure to explain it away, knows what it feels like. They know how it moves. They know when it is present, even before it becomes obvious to everyone else. That knowledge does not come from books. It comes from the willingness to sit still long enough to see. The most perceptive people are not necessarily the most social. They are the ones who have learned to alternate between presence and distance, between participation and observation. They engage when it serves them. They step back when clarity requires it. This is not about superiority, it is about function. If you want to understand people, you need space to process what you observe. You need silence to let patterns emerge. You need distance to avoid confusing your reaction with reality. Spending time alone does not make you better than others. It makes you better at seeing others. And once you can see clearly, every choice becomes more informed. Every boundary becomes easier to set. Every relationship becomes easier to navigate. Not because you have all the answers, but because you have learned to trust what you notice. The people who saw the warning signs early were not psychic. They were just paying attention without the noise of constant engagement drowning out the signal. That is the difference solitude makes. It turns down the volume on everything else so the truth can be heard. And once you hear it, you act accordingly.